Thank you for listening to Spooky Mountain, everyone. My name's Steph.
And I'm Jordi, and thanks for joining us on our newest episode. This is now our fourth episode? Or fifth? Fourth?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Our fourth episode.
Yeah.
Yay. We're almost at number 5.
Almost there.
Almost there.
And it's exciting as well because we've officially released our first episode out to the world at this point. So we've got a lot of listening people, which is cool.
Yeah, we got a really good response. I feel we got a really good response from our first episode being released. We've got people
better
listening.
Than I thought.
Yeah, me too. Way better. I think, we really enjoy having a presence on like social media and chatting to people.
Yeah,
and I reckon
definitely.
that makes a huge difference because I think listeners feel like we want to be talking.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Connecting.
I mean, for my personal Instagram, I was always sharing creepy stuff, but I kind of held it back a little bit.
Yes.
But now that we've got the the podcast one, I'm going all out. So
it's like,
as you can tell, if anyone's following, there's so many stories going up.
Yeah, it's the perfect excuse to just post whatever the fuck you want in terms of the paranormal, UFOs.
I'm really enjoying it. It's awesome.
Oh, me too. I'm loving it. I always get, I don't know about you, but every week I'm so excited to write my story and leading up to recording. I'm always so G'd up. And then after we finish recording, I always have a really hard adrenaline crash. I crash so hard after recording because I get such a high from it. So it's like,
yeah, it's a build up for like an entire week of working on your story and just thinking of what's going to happen during the recording. And once it happens, I'm just like, I could literally just sleep forever. I'm exactly the same. And like there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes also. It's not just a matter of us writing our story and then us recording. Like, for example, last night we were chatting for 3 hours or something because we've just started. I think it was 4 hours.
Yeah.
It was so long.
We spent many hours working on this.
Past midnight.
It was a long time. And we were working on this new software to improve our recording so that whoever's listening, it sounds a bit better. And, because after we
always wanting to improve.
Yeah, after we released our first episode, we got some feedback from people saying that, the episode was great, but the quality was a little bit quiet, and so we just wanted to improve on that. Speaking of two things, speaking of social media, you can find us on a bunch of different social media platforms. We're present on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We have a Twitch account, not fully active just yet, but you can find us at Spooky Mountain Podcast. That's our social media handle. The second thing was, speaking of spending all night trying to work on this software thing, I don't know if you've ever had this before, but it's like this dream sleeping experience where you're asleep, but it's almost like you're not fully asleep and you're kind of like dreaming as well while your body is kind of sleeping, but you're almost like your consciousness is still aware.
Yeah. You're awake, but you're still dreaming.
Yes. I had that last night, and what I was dreaming about was all these dials and numbers that we were working on this software, on this recording software.
We were doing so much troubleshooting last night. It was
so much.
We were reading. We're going through this whole tutorial on YouTube together, and then we encountered an issue, and then we had to go into a whole other tutorial to get this other one finished, and it was just absolutely crazy. We were both just
look, Mama had a few glasses of wine while we were doing this, so that just made it a bit harder as well.
So you had a numbers dream, did you?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's fun. I didn't have anything like that.
Have you ever
nothing special?
Have you ever had sleep paralysis before? Just a kind of change of subject while we're talking about
not
sleep.
Not really. I don't think I wouldn't say sleep paralysis. I haven't really had anything like that happen to me, luckily. I have heard myself snoring, which has been weird.
Oh,
I've
yes.
literally woken myself
It
up.
is weird, isn't
like,
it?
I'm known as a really, occasionally, a terrifying snorer.
Ooh, so not just a loud
yeah.
snorer, but like a terrifying snorer.
I hit like a different realm of snoring. I've been called a cat with asthma.
Wow.
That was using a chainsaw. Like, I don't know what. Yeah, seriously. I think I've got naturally very large tonsils, so I blame it on those.
It's the tonsils.
But it sounds like I'm choking. And I don't know. It's very strange, but like pretty much anyone that slept next to me, it's usually when I've like drunk a bit the night before, or if I'm just a bit fluey, if I'm not sleeping too well.
Yeah.
And it's, Dylan's gets worried and he wakes me up because it sounds like I'm struggling to breathe. But then I wake up and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? I'm fine. Oh my God. Like, I'm half asleep. But I've woken myself up to a really scary noise before, and Dylan's like, that's
and
you.
What the fuck was that? It's the ghost. Well, as someone who lived with you, I've never heard you snore.
I'm surprised. Yeah.
Well, my dad used to be like a terrifying snorer, but he was like a heavy smoker for like many years, and so he still snores now that even though he's quit smoking, but he still snores. But when he was like a very heavy smoker, that's exactly what his snoring sound like. It sounded like he was choking. I'm pretty sure he actually had like sleep apnea at one point.
Sleep apnea. Yeah.
Which is scary.
I don't know. I've never been tested for it. Like, I mean, Dylan always talks about it. He's like, you probably have it. But yeah, he sounds like my whole nose closes up and I'm just taking tiny little breaths through my mouth. And then, it's weird. But it was funny because over a year ago, I don't usually like sleeping like over at people's houses or in a lot of where everyone's going to be sleeping in the same room. Like,
because of your snoring.
Yeah, like I seriously do. And over a year ago for a friend's birthday, there was like 8 of us, like 8 girls, and we all went sleeping, and one of them had this massive tent. It was incredible. And we went like out in the bush, and I got woken up in the middle of the night. And they're like, Steph is snoring. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then I went back to sleep, and then the next morning, one of the girls was like, oh, God, it was so weird. I was having so many weird dreams. It kept sounding like someone was opening and closing the zipper of the tent all night. And they're like, I must have been having a weird dream. And they were like, that was Steph snoring. I was like, what? That sound like a zipper.
You're like out in the bush, and one of the people is like, there was a lion nearby, and it was growling. And
I was scaring them about the yowie before we went to bed as well. I was telling them all about the yowie.
The yowie is actually just Steph.
I was too scared to go to the toilet as well. I scared myself. I was like, oh, why have I done this?
Well,
but
while we're on the topic of like sleeping and stuff, I actually had it wasn't like a full sleep paralysis, but I had my first experience of like sleep to wake hallucinating just like a couple of days ago. So I've never experienced sleep paralysis, and it's something that I've actually been so fucking scared of for a really long time. Like, I refuse to sleep on my back because apparently you get it more when you sleep on your back.
Oh,
so
no way.
I refuse to sleep on my back because I'm so scared of getting sleep paralysis. But like majority of the time, I'm like super sleep deprived because of my daughter, and so I think this can also cause like sleep paralysis and stuff. But what I experienced was I was having like a few extra hours sleep in the morning because my partner took Panda and was looking after her, and I woke up suddenly and I saw this huge tarantula climbing up the wall, and it was plain as day, as real as what it is looking at you right now.
Oh my God.
It was like this huge.
Wait, how big was it?
It was huge. It was probably like, I don't know, I want to say like...
Oh, like, okay, stupid big.
Stupid
like
big.
A foot and a half.
Yeah, like unrealistic big. Like no spider is actually this big.
Yeah, no.
And I remember like in my head when I saw it, I was like, what is that spider doing in my room?
Yeah.
Like, because it was just so realistic, and in my head it wasn't like a hallucination, you know. But I wasn't paralyzed, thank God, because that's just the worst shit ever that I could imagine to happen.
That's messed up.
Yeah. It was fucked. It was really scary.
Well, speaking of sleep paralysis.
Oh no.
My story is kind of in that realm of things.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's just a bit of a thing that's going to be coming up.
Well, that's great.
To prepare you. What's your story about?
Okay.
Give me a hint.
All right. My story, it's a little bit different this week. I haven't done a story like this yet, and I don't think I'm gonna do one like this again because it's quite history based. And
love it.
It's not like a super spooky story where there's like entities. It's more of like a history type thing that involves the paranormal, which I thought, you know, could be a nice like change.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah,
need a refresher every now and again.
Yeah. So I'm excited to tell it, and it's a nice kind of change from last week because last week I spoke about Zozo, and then I spent like this past week just being so fucking terrified of everything.
Yeah. Well, now I'm terrified because of my story. I thought I'd do.
The one that you're about to tell.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, I'm excited. I'm glad you're doing something like super spooky.
Yeah, mine's really scary. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. But yeah, so that's coming up. But I thought I'd tell you about a story that
is this like a pre-story?
No, this is just something that my sister. I found out about my sister this week. So
how exciting!
Yeah, because as you guys know, in our time zone right now, our first episode has currently been released. So everyone's only heard our first one. So we're getting a lot of feedback and everyone's talking and going, oh yeah, this is really interesting talking about this stuff. And my sister was really interested about my whole like astral traveling thing in the house we grew up in.
Yep.
So this isn't the Katoomba house. This is the other one we had beforehand.
Yes.
And she was like, yeah, it reminds me of the time I had my experience. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you had anything happen there. And she's like,
no way.
You know, the experience I had. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then my other sister and my mum were like, wait, you don't know about what happened to her there? And I'm like, what? Have I been kept out of the loop here?
Yeah.
And she told me the experience is actually the most terrifying thing ever. So
oh my God.
I'm going to tell her. She's given me permission as of, 10 minutes ago?
10 minutes ago, yeah.
So she's going to laugh when she hears this.
Happy birthday, Steph's sister, by the way.
Yeah. 25 years young. And yeah, so at this time, she would have literally been about 3 or 4 years old. And this is why it's so weird because we didn't move to the Blue Mountains till she would have been about 5. So she really doesn't have memory of this house at all, really, except for this experience. And she said it wasn't like an old house that we lived in. It was just in this suburban area, pretty new house. Like when I moved in there, it was built and I was like 2 years old. So it was like just built then at that point.
Pretty new house.
Very new house, yeah. We didn't really have any creepy experiences there except for my one. But my sister was saying that she was asleep in bed and she remembers getting up and the house was the same, but she said it was like she was in a different realm. And no one else was in the house, so no one was in their beds. She said it was like this weird, like everything was lit up like blue. And I think the best way to describe it is she said she was in like a different realm pretty much. The lighting was weird. I didn't ask about the furniture or anything, but she said there was just no one in the house or anything. And she was walking around the house kind of being like, what is going on? Where am I? It's really weird. Completely dead quiet. And then she got into the lounge room, and at the lounge room there's this really big window that we had that just looked out to the front of the driveway, which was like, 50 meters long, and then it was just a street. And she looked out the window, and there was a grey alien standing outside the window, staring at her. And she doesn't really remember what happened from that point. She just remembered being like, what the fuck is going on? Because at this point, when you're that young, you haven't even consumed anything that would look like that. Like, she's like, I had no idea what an alien was. I've never seen anything like that. Like,
let alone like a grey alien, which is kind of like
grey alien.
Yeah.
She's a really tall one.
Yeah.
And yeah, she said it was literally staring at her. And then the next thing she remembers is her lying in her bed and she couldn't move. She was trying to scream and she could not scream.
Oh my God.
And yeah, apparently everyone knows this but me. And I'm like, well, thank God I'm doing a spooky podcast because that's going out to everyone.
You were like the one person that should know about this because you were like obsessed with UFOs and aliens.
I was like, what do you mean? This is fucked up.
That makes me feel like...
I didn't know anyone had seen an alien. I remember I was saying that last time, like the worst thing you ever see is an alien. And she was like, yeah, I've always...
That makes me feel like she was abducted, and it's like something.
Oh my God!
But she
something's happened.
Like something happened, like that. Maybe she was asleep, or something happened. I don't know. This is a pretty crazy.
Yeah,
theory.
maybe
Like
missing
something happened to her in her sleep because there's been like I don't know exact reports, but I know there's been recounts of people who like dreamt things, but then they woke up and they had like weird marks on their body.
They see an owl outside their window.
They see an owl. They have vague memories of stuff happening, but it's always kind of like, oh, was I
wonder if she's been down
or...
that path of thinking about it like that.
Wonder.
I mean, it's obviously something that's happened so long ago and being that young, but she remembers what the alien looks like very clearly.
That is so terrifying. But also
that's really scary.
The part that she was like paralyzed is like she had that is kind of the part that makes me think like, ooh, is this something more than just like a scary dream? Because like to be like stuck in your bed. So was she paralyzed in her dream? Do you know?
No. So in her dream she was walking around the house.
But then when that paralyzed part was like after she had woken up, but she was just kind of like stuck.
So she said that she saw the alien and then she was like just standing there freaking out and then she doesn't remember what happens there and then the next memory is of her in her bed like screaming but nothing's coming out and she cannot move.
Oh my God. You should scan her for microchips.
Oh my God, I should get a metal detector.
You should to see
when lockdown's over, I'll just rock up at a house with a metal detector and be like, lie down.
That's a terrifying experience for anyone, let alone a kid that's so young. But they say that, you know, kids are more susceptible to the paranormal because they're not as like jaded and callous to monsters and everything. Do you ever remember having something strange that you saw something strange as a kid that you could account for something that's paranormal? There
was one thing, but it sounds really stupid that this is at the same house.
Okay.
So I had two younger sisters. They had a shared bedroom and then I had my own. And I loved having my own room, but I used to be scared, obviously. And I didn't have curtains on my window and I used to just lie out and look outside the window when I'd go to sleep. Very suburban area, no bush or really anything around. But this one night, I mean, I must have been like 7 years old or something. And I wasn't asleep because I remember just like, I think I just went to bed and I was like, oh, okay. And I think mum and dad was still in the lounge room with the TV on and I was just looking out the window and it looked like Aladdin on a magic carpet, just slowly like went past my window, like not in the distance or anything, like he could just put his hand out and touch the glass of the window. And I remember just looking at it going, that is weird. And it just kind of went past my window, like solid but it was all black. It wasn't. So,
okay.
And I don't know, because I was like, was it a shadow coming from somewhere?
Something
and it could have been. So, but it's always something that stuck with me because I'm like, that was the weirdest thing. I remember just thinking, Aladdin went past my window on a magic carpet. Because I remember he had, like, I just remember looking exactly like Aladdin, and the magic carpet I could see weirdly. And I never even watched Aladdin that much either, which is strange.
I wonder if it was something, but then your kid brain was kind of just
interprets it as something else.
Yeah, as something like Aladdin or something like that. Yeah,
have you watched Taken, the alien, the show about the alien encounters or abductions?
No, I haven't watched it.
It's pretty creepy. I watched it a really long time ago, like 15 years ago, but it's something about like aliens coming and taking people. But when they come to see kids, to get them into the ship, they would change form into something that the kids would recognize to get them to come out.
Creepy.
So they would turn into like book characters that they were familiar with. Like there's this scene where it turns into this like chipmunk and it's like, come out the window. And the kid's like, oh yeah. So that's what I always think of.
That is so creepy.
Okay.
That almost reminds me of like when you hear of like dark entities pretending to be kids, like they'll like copy a kids laughing or something, and it's kind of like more sinister than a child. Yeah. It's something trying to kind of like draw you in. When I have this memory as a kid. So growing up, I grew up with my parents separated, even though they're now back together. But I grew up with my parents separated, and I lived with my mum, and I pretty much like slept in her bed forever. And I will never forget that pretty much every few nights I would see this big black man figure, like shadow figure, standing at the end of the bed. And every time I saw it, I would be like, Mom, I can see a man standing at the end of the bed, and he was big and round. I was like, oh,
round?
Yes, like, but kind of, like big, kind of round belly.
Oh my God.
And it was very much like I could see the head, the belly, the arms, the legs. And I'd be like, Mom, I can see this man standing at the end of the bed. And every single time I said it to her, she was like, oh, it's just a shadow from the computer, which was kind of like pre-internet days. It was like a very, very basic brick computer.
Oh, yeah.
And like the computer would be like turned off. So it like definitely wasn't the computer. But I remember... But the figure was always like in a different spot, kind of at the end of the bed or next to the bed. So it was always changing. It wasn't ever in the same place. And I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, my mum's father, he passed away not long. He was like very, very sick through my mum's pregnancy with me. And my mum has always said like she reckons that he just made it past her giving birth to me just so he could meet me, and then he passed away not long after I was like very, very soon after I was born. So I was thinking the other day, like maybe it was him. I don't know.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, like it could definitely have been a shadow from the window or the computer or whatever. But I
definitely could have been.
It could have been. Like I can see it in my mind's eye what it looked like, and it was clearly a big, and he was round as well. Like my mum's father, he was like a round bloke, very similar shape to.
Has your mum seen anything like that?
No, never. She didn't see it then. She hasn't seen anything. I don't think she's.
And you haven't seen anything since either, like that.
No, I don't know. I just kind of think that kids are either they're just like not jaded, and they are more
pick up on certain things.
Yeah, and they're more open to seeing things, or I don't know, something similar.
That's cool.
That. Yeah,
yeah, because I feel like now at this point, if I saw Aladdin past the window, I probably wouldn't even recognize it, or I'd just dismiss it as something. Because I just feel like it's so stupid.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it was like a dark kind of like thing. Like
it was like a silhouette.
Yeah, like a silhouette, but you still kind of interpret it, like, well, not, I don't want to say interpret, but you saw it as like Aladdin as well. Maybe there was something
Yeah.
going on in that house, even though it was a new house, because there's been like a couple of things that
Maybe.
you've said that,
Yeah, it's weird because I think the house next to us was really old, but like it was one of those new suburb areas.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like, but pretty much the house next to us was the oldest house, and I think that was there first, and then everything else was built around it. So I don't know. And we knew the guy who lived there, and he was really nice, and we went over there. So maybe it might have something to do with that, or maybe it's the land that it was on as well.
You don't know what could have been on that land beforehand. And it's interesting as well that like your experience in this house and your sister's experience in the house are both like dream related, because you had your kind of like astral projection in this house, and then your sister had this very intense dream in this house.
Yeah.
Also,
it's so weird because I've got to find out if anyone else did now, because I always thought, there was nothing in the house. It was just like a shitty new brick house, and yeah, I don't know. I just thought I had an experience there and no one else did, so I didn't really think much of it. But maybe I'll ask Mum.
Do you believe that like people can be haunted or people can attract paranormal stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think at different points in their life, though, I think it just depends. I think there are certain people that are more susceptible to picking up on certain things in different ways. So I feel like a lot of people can see things, a lot of people feel things more. But also I think if you want to have it happen as well. So if you're just completely busy all the time, I feel like if you live right in the city and you're surrounded by a lot of noises and sounds and people, you're probably not going to be able to pick up on that as much.
Yeah.
But if you're going out and seeking things and being open to everything.
Very open to it, for sure.
Yeah, I think you can definitely do it. But some people just don't experience anything. Like my ex at the time, he came to our Blue Mountains house a lot, and he never had anything happen to him. And I remember he would get frustrated because everyone else was talking about it.
Really?
Nothing happened to him. Yeah.
That's very
He would sit there, I remember, and he'd be like, come on, ghost. Come on.
Was he a skeptical person or...
Yeah, very skeptical. Yeah, he was.
It's such a like fine line, because it's like, is like if the paranormal world does exist, in some kind of capacity, are they just like not as drawn to people who are skeptical, or is it that because a person is skeptical, they're not being just kind of like gullible to the bullshit, you know?
Yeah, it's very strange. I didn't really know where to sit on that, because I was like, I know what I've seen, and you know, it's just very strange. I couldn't believe it, honestly, the amount of times he's been there. I was like, something has got to happen.
Yeah, of course, because he was there. I know who you're talking about, and I lived with you, so he was there often.
He lived in that house.
Yes. That's But again, thinking about that house, it seems like the people who lived in that house had different types of experiences, because you had many like visual things, right? Like you saw a lot of stuff. I heard some things. I don't think, because like when I was living there, we were living with my boyfriend there, who was a housemate. I'm pretty sure he just heard things. I don't know if he saw anything.
I don't think he saw anything.
He definitely heard. I know he heard.
Yeah, I told him a lot. Yeah. I think he was aware of what was going on, but I knew he was feeling a little bit uneasy sometimes. I think he didn't feel like being in the house alone, but nothing. I don't think anything happened to him.
We saw like doors opening together. So like because I think maybe our first episode, I spoke about like the door like opening, like seeing the door, the doorknob turn and then open.
Which doorknob? Which door?
The bedroom door.
Okay. Yeah.
It was
I'm
the
just trying to
bedroom
picture
door.
it. I'm scared. Yeah.
It's the bedroom door. Okay. It was like an old circular like door,
yes.
and it's the room that is supposedly one of the bad rooms, right? So that it was like, even just thinking about that room, fucking creepy. Like, it was a creepy room, but we were...
Yeah, my mum slept in there and she would have a lot of things happen to her in there.
What did... I know, I would really like to get your mum on an episode, but can you just give, like, a general gist of...
I'll tell one story that happened.
Okay.
She had a really big bed in that room. My dad built this just gigantic bed, and she was sleeping in the bed at night. It wasn't a windy night or anything, and she felt this gust of air go right under the blanket, lift up the doona. She said she saw the doona go
hell no.
like that, and she was like, oh my God. And then it went back down, and then she said that she heard this male voice next to her head, her ear, just go, I like the name Alison.
Oh my God. Allison. That's terrifying.
And she didn't see anything at that point. She has seen the things, which, I'll get into later on. Yep. But yeah, that was one thing that she always talks about. She's like, yep, there was a big gust. And then there was just this man voice, as clear as day, right next to my head, that just said, I like the name Alison. And that happened in that room.
I would literally wet the bed that I was laying.
I know. So I'd call the police or something. I'd be so scared.
Just thinking about that room, just to give a kind of visual of that room. I think it was yellow, right? It was a yellow room.
It was yellow, yeah.
Yellow and like old kind of like floorboards. Like I'm going to say matte. This isn't a technical term.
Yeah, they weren't stained or anything.
They weren't stained. It was just literally like raw floorboards.
Yeah,
and it was like a fibro house. But it was
in this like kind of pastel yellow walls.
Yeah,
and then one window, which was a bay window.
That's
and it
right.
would look over the front yard.
It was a beautiful house, but that room, and it was a beautiful room. But
really beautiful.
I remember, like, even if I had my stuff in there, I always felt like the room was so empty. I don't know how to describe it. It just felt so like
really high ceilings too.
Maybe
and
that's
I think
why.
Maybe that's what made it feel like that.
Probably,
I don't know.
yeah. Because I had like books in my bed and drawers and stuff. But yeah, it always felt like
and I never
too
felt
empty.
Right in that room.
No. Yeah, it was a creepy room.
I think I should get to my story now.
Yes, okay, we've been chatting a while.
We're getting too much on the topic of my story, and I'm scared we're going to end up covering something.
Okay, all right, I am ready for your story.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about the pretty dark character, well, a pretty dark character for this episode. He's known as the Hatman. So...
Oh, Steph.
Yeah?
Okay, you were like touching on one of my fears right now. Last week we spoke about Zozo, and that's a one that I'm just like, what?
I know. Well, now you know why I've been scared all week. So this
Steph. Okay, all good.
Okay,
all right, just fucking start. All right.
So yeah, he's a really common shadow figure, and he's one of the sleep paralysis entities, pretty much. So shadow figures are just about exactly what they sound like. Dark, vaporous forms in the shape of humans. Some might be dilute manifestations of people who were once living. Others may be something else that we don't understand. And the Hatman, however, is a singular character inside that broader category, reported to have particular character traits, a more solid outline than most shadow people, and an especially noticeable visible marker is always wearing a hat.
Oh, that's terrifying.
So
that one aspect. I don't know why. It's just so terrifying.
It's terrifying.
The hat.
I know. It's like, what is it? A hat. Great. Yeah, it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
So, and he stands about 6 feet tall, sometimes taller, which forces him to crouch where he is standing. Which makes me actually want to throw up.
So scary.
I know, it's so scary. Like, I'm laughing, but I'm actually like...
Yeah, but like crying on the inside.
So, most people report him having a large coat or a cape, and his facial features cannot be seen. Although there have been a few accounts of people seeing him with red eyes. So, the Hatman has been seen all over the world, but came to fame, so to speak, in April 2001, when the topic of shadow people was discussed at length on the radio show Coast to Coast. The host, Art Bell, interviewed Native American elder Thunderstrikes, who is also known as Harley Swifty Regan. During the show, listeners were encouraged to submit drawings of shadow people that they had seen, and a large number of these drawings were immediately shared publicly on the website, which is still up there.
Oh my God.
They're really creepy.
I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. Yeah, it's on the Coast to Coast website. And in October that year, Heidi Hollis published her first book on the topic of shadow people and later became a regular guest on Coast to Coast. Hollis described shadow people as dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles that flicker in and out of peripheral vision, and claims that people have reported the figures attempting to jump on their chest and choke them. She believes the figures to be negative alien beings.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I might have to read her book, I think.
Yeah. Just every new attribution is fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
It's scary enough that he's just fucking wearing a hat.
Exactly. And I take the hat off at least,
At least take the hat off or just shrink down a foot or so.
Yeah, exactly. This 3-foot hat man, you'd be like, okay,
oh, it's just
maybe
cute.
not too bad.
Cute little guy.
Someone that crouches to get in. I don't think so. And yeah, a lot of people haven't even heard of the Hat Man. But you might not realize that you've actually seen him before, as he is in a lot of common movies and shows like the Netflix horror show The Haunting of Hill House, and of course The Babadook, which is an Australian psychological horror film, which is incredible. So everyone needs to watch that. So the Hat Man acts like a ghost, meaning it keeps its distance and it usually stays just out of sight, always keeping in the corner of the room or hiding behind a door or a cupboard. Luckily for most, the Hat Man doesn't ever inflict physical harm. What he's actually after is slower, more insidious. He just watches the sleeper, sometimes arching his very long body over their bed. It's said that even though he doesn't touch his victims, they can feel evil emanating from him in waves. They can feel that he wants to do them harm. The theory is that he has a look and don't touch approach. And of course, this creates a sense of confusion, anticipation, and fear in his victim. Feeding off the fear of his subject could be the main purpose of the Hat Man's visit, meaning that your bedroom is his charging station or petrol station, someone said in an article, which made me laugh. Yeah, I know. Oh my God. So when he's not hovering over the sleeper, he employs 2 other common methods of viewing his prey: looking at the sleeper through the mirror or sitting and watching them from the corner. Now, you're probably thinking, Steph, this is terrifying. When does he show up? Is there any way I can prevent myself from seeing him? And look, a lot of encounters have happened to people when they were children. So if you're older than that, you might be okay. Unless you also suffer from sleep paralysis.
Oh, girl.
Or you're experiencing some turmoil in your life. Or you sleep. Or have a bedroom. Okay, so pretty much we're all not safe.
Pretty much anyone.
So he can appear to anyone at any time. However, there does seem to be a bit of a pattern of him showing up to people who are in turmoil, most commonly. And apparently the Hat Man can also direct other shadow entities to terrorize you, like the old hag, who is a very common visitor for people suffering sleep paralysis. She's known to sit on your chest to make you feel suffocated. It's terrifying. If you've played Skyrim, the old hag is that weird witch woman. That's exactly what it is. It's just like some scary, really weird, evil goblin witchy woman. Although the Hat Man can seemingly appear at any time of day in any location, many encounters have occurred in bedrooms when the person is just about to go to sleep, has just woken up, or is already asleep. And it also happens in basements. And that's just because they're dark and scary, so that makes sense. But yeah, so I do have a couple little stories, of course. I mean, we're going to have to definitely do that. So the first one I've got, so I saw him at 18 years old in my room after a pretty traumatic experience. I woke up at an incredibly late hour, probably 2 or 3 a.m. I didn't check, but something was off. I was speaking in a language I've never heard.
Oh my God.
I was speaking to what I can only describe as a young girl, or something with the body type of a young girl, perhaps 14, in a dress. I couldn't make out her features, but I could make out her eyes and her mouth, which could only be described as sharp-looking, like a human piranha or something.
Oh my God, that is like the last description that you want to hear of anything.
It's so scary. She was whispering something in my ear, and I was replying in this strange language. But it wasn't just this shadow girl by my bed. My bed was also surrounded by tall, dark figures, which I could only make out the features of, perhaps 4 of them, not counting the girl. They sat motionless and watched me, but the most striking figure was a tall man in a wide-brimmed hat standing in the corner of my room. I could feel as if he was amused. Each time the girl whispered in my ear, I would let out a reply of which I didn't understand, and the man in the hat would be delighted. You'd think that one would be scared of this sort of encounter, but it felt familiar. I felt rather warm, as if I was surrounded by old family or friends. So that one was weird because it's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
But then the way it ends is like, but, you know, I didn't feel so scared, and friends and family were surrounding me. So that one's weird. The next one I've got here. Okay. A couple months ago, I was driving back from a protest late at night, and I was taking the back roads home. And I looked down at my phone to see how far I have to go until I need to turn. And when I look back up, I see what looks like an 8-foot tall humanoid figure, except it was darker than everything else around it. And it looked like it had a cowboy hat, and there was no other distinguishing features. Here's the weird thing, though. No matter how fast or slow I was driving, it didn't seem like it got further or closer away. Then the next thing I know, I blink and it's gone with the wind, and it was like nothing was ever there, and no tragedy came afterwards. The other thing about this whole incident that weirded me out was the way it moved. The best way I can describe it is if it was like the light was flickering on and off, and it was like a still image moving, except my headlights were never flickering and I never felt scared or threatened. I really felt weird and confused about the whole thing. So that's really scary. That's a weird one because obviously they're in the car. Yeah. They're actually not in a house.
It's not in bed also.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely
so
seems
most
to
of
be
them are.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of them are in bed or in the house or something. So I thought that one was cool. And just the fact that you're just driving on your own and there's just that still image in the same spot.
Yeah, it's fucking
I hate that.
creepy.
All right. So here's another one. In my experience, I have only witnessed the being once. As surreal as this memory is, I can't convince myself to believe I was conscious or unconscious due to what the fuck I saw. I was 5 or 6. It was about 8 a.m. on a weekend, and I was getting up before all my family. I hopped out of my bed on the main floor and headed for the basement stairs to get down there and play some video games, of course. I whipped the corner to the top of the stairs, facing down, and fuck me, guys, there was 4 or 5 solid black silhouettes in trench coats and top hats in a semicircle facing me, just standing there at the bottom of the stairs. I remember them having no face, no red eyes, no canes, and they said nothing. I froze and just stared at them for about 5 seconds. Then the next thing, I literally woke up at the bottom of the stairs and I got up, ran back to my bed, fell back asleep, and that was it.
Wow.
That one makes me really sick.
Yeah.
Thinking about.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like some of your stories that you had from the Katoomba house.
Oh my God.
Not to scare you or anything, but it definitely reminds me of some stuff that you've told me that like
it's so messed up, that one. So those past stories are pretty dark. So you do get the feeling that the Hatman is up to no good.
Yeah.
However, there are also stories of people getting comforting feelings from it and seeing the Hatman as some sort of protector. So the following story is something that I found in that sense. So I used to sleepwalk and get night terrors and sleep paralysis as a child. And every night, without fail, this shadow man in a hat and long coat would stand in my doorway. He was darker than the darkest night. Even if I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, I could always see him. And on moonlit nights, no features were ever visible. He was just a clean silhouette made of pure darkness. Around sunset, I would start feeling uneasy because I knew he'd be coming soon. He was never there when I went to bed, but at a certain point in the night, I'd just know he'd arrive. I'd always roll over back to look at him, and I was never afraid in those moments. I'd just stare at him and feel completely calm. It was more in the daytime that I felt uncomfortable about the fact that I had some shadow dude hanging out in my room. I told my mum about it, and she suggested that I just ask him to go away. Her reasoning was that if I wasn't getting bad vibes off him, he'd probably leave if I knew I didn't want him there. So when I was 12, I asked him to leave, and he did. Vanished without any fuss, and I haven't seen him since. I still do get sleep paralysis, and I've had some hectic encounters with shadow people who feel like they're made of electricity, ones that glitch in and out of the walls, whisper strange messages, try to get into my body. But Hatman was the only one who was super chill, didn't ever try to scare me, and just seemed like a guardian. It was such a trip finding out that so many other people have seen this exact same thing, and even weirder finding out that everyone else found him evil. I feel like that neighbor they interview on the news when a murderer is arrested and the neighbor says, "He always seemed like a nice guy, really quiet." So yeah, that was pretty cool. And a little bit refreshing, I guess, if we do end up seeing him. But yeah, so now there's this Christopher French guy who is a psychology professor at the University of London, and he's put an interesting idea out there of what this entity could be. So, quote, "In sleep paralysis, you're in this weird kind of hybrid state, a mix of normal waking consciousness, a dream consciousness. You know you can't move, you can see that you're in your bedroom, so it feels very, very real. When I sat and thought about the Hatman, the thing that came to my mind was Freddy Krueger.
Oh my God.
This notion that you can be attacked when you're asleep, that's when you're vulnerable. And of course, Krueger wears a hat.
A hat as well, yep.
I know. I thought that was so interesting. So, yeah, if you're not sure who that is, it's a character from a horror film, Nightmare on Elm Street.
A very
and it came out in
famous
1984.
horror movie.
Super famous.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, really spooky guy with a massive broad-brimmed hat and attacked people while they were in their beds. So Freddy Krueger's distinctive silhouette became an iconic symbol of fear for a generation. So it's very possible that it could have infiltrated people's nightmares as well. But yeah, luckily for me, I've never had to encounter anything like that so far. And as of you before this, you said you haven't really seen something like the Hatman, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, just before you were saying you have, but you didn't feel scared because you think it's probably
well, with the Shadow Man that I saw, it was definitely not related to like a paralysis either. It was like it was. I remember like it was always before I even fell asleep. So it's not like I woke up and he was there. It was like I'd be falling asleep and I just noticed he was there. Like
wow,
but
that's interesting.
the Hatman though, like what a great story. Like through that whole thing, I just had so many reactions of like disgust and terror and fear and surprise. Like
it's creepy. I really hope I never see it.
Something that I feel like is maybe super creepy about it, because I've heard of this guy before. I actually listened to a podcast on him a while ago by
I knew you would have heard of the Hatman before. I want everyone else to know.
I hadn't heard of him until I listened to this episode about him by a podcast called Scared to Death. It's a really awesome podcast.
Oh yeah, that would have definitely covered him.
It was it's a very interesting it's very interesting. What I think is so creepy about it and what others find so creepy about it is the fact that he's wearing a hat, but he's an entity. So it's like, why does he need to wear a hat? Is it him trying to appear more human to like for whatever reason, like to trick people, or is it to seem more relatable?
Theories around that.
Or is he a ghost that used to be alive and that's why he's wearing a hat, because in life he used to wear a hat also? Right. But I don't, if, you know, this is a thing that does exist and people have witnessed this, I don't feel like it's like a person that used to be alive. I don't feel like it's a ghost. I feel like it's
I don't think so either.
Kind of like ether middle dimension.
It's something completely different.
Yeah.
I think as well. There was this whole other realm of this other theory I was reading about how it's potentially like an alien. And they have disguised themselves into like the way a human commonly looks, just to seep in, and they don't do anything. They're just there to observe. So I thought that was interesting, but I didn't want to talk about that too much. It's like, I'll leave the aliens out of this one.
I feel like there is a crossover, though. I feel like in some kind of way, or you know, there is a crossover of the paranormal, like not just the paranormal, but like ghosts and spirits, aliens, sleep paralysis, and just generally being asleep. I feel like, I don't know,
it's all entwined.
Like even just like aliens and ghosts. I feel like there is some kind of intertwining there with that, and I have no idea how or what it could be, but I do feel like there is some kind of like
it's all dimensional
of that. Your story really reminds me so much of it's not a famous photo, but it's this photo that's called like either like the Shadow Children or like the Ghost Children, and it's this photo that was taken in a forest somewhere. I think maybe this is something that we could post on Instagram after we've
let's post it on Instagram. That's really creepy.
It's a very creepy photo that was taken in a forest in America, and the photographer is kind of like down the hill and has taken the photo facing up the hill.
And I think I know what you're talking about.
It's a semi-famous photo in the world of the paranormal, and and it's taken at nighttime. And along the ridge of this hill, you can see a line of ghost children. And apparently it's real. Might not be, but apparently it's real. And it's, very creepy. It's very, even if it's not real, it's a very cool photo. It's really, really interesting to look at.
We'll post it on the Instagram. That's really cool.
It's I've like every now and then it'll pop into my head and I'm just like, oh, I gotta like Google this photo. But like just thinking about like the kind of congregation of shadow people in their houses, that kind of reminded me of that a bit. But like, also, why the fuck are they doing that? Why are these groups of shadow people like congregating?
Isn't one enough? Is
one
enough fear?
It's almost like this guy in the hat is like an overseer or like a
he controls it all. He can
of the other shadow people.
Ooh, a conductor. That's creepy.
It's very creepy. But then he also has like something that stood out to me in this story was that some people perceived him to be warm and almost welcoming.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's interesting.
It's very interesting. I love that story. Thanks for that one.
Great.
Mine's very different.
Oh, I'm glad. Because I'm going to be really scared now. So I need you to calm me down.
This one's a bit funny. So yeah, quite different this week. Again, it's quite history based. I'm just gonna go ahead with it, and you can listen to what I got.
Yeah, for sure.
When I say the words occultism, paganism, astrology, mysticism, folklore, mythology, werewolves, vampires, what comes to your mind? Is it some cottagecore Instagram influencer with curls in her hair, in a floral dress, winged eyeliner with pagan tattoos down her arm, playing with tarot cards and talking about just how awful Scorpios are? Or perhaps it conjures an image of a blonde, dreaded Swedish LARPer, which is live action role player.
Oh,
for
yeah.
anyone who's not heard that term. in a Slayer shirt, a cape, a pretend magic staff made from a stick he found in the woods with a quartz crystal stuck to the top, while yelling something about wizards or elves or trolls or something. What I can only predict you are not imagining is Nazis. Yes, Nazis.
Yeah, definitely not Nazis.
No. Hitler, Goebbels, and Himmler type Nazis. In my story today, we don't have a particularly neat layout of a timeline. It's more of just a mash of the crazy shit that the SS believed in and what they seriously thought was going to help them win the war. So, what kind of crazy shit are we talking about? In particular, they had an intense interest in parapsychology, which is like psychics and mediums and clairvoyants, New Age fantasies and so-called order science, which is a name that they came up with themselves, which is the kind of stuff that sounds like it should be science, but it is absolutely not science, and more like crunchy woo-woo garbage.
Okay.
Some head Nazi leaders firmly believed that the Aryan race descended from the aliens who created Atlantis. Yes, they believed that aliens built Atlantis. Yeah. They believed that Satan was just a super good guy and that werewolves were real, very real, and they actively protected themselves against the ravages and sexual depredations of Slavic vampires. For us, monsters such as these are almost purely a fictional phenomenon. But for a lot of the SS, vampires represented the degenerate Slavic or Jewish races that they were, who were there to suck Germany dry of resources and contaminate the Aryan blood, which is how they really truly saw it. For the Nazis, there were also the good there were also the good monsters, like the werewolves, as well as folklore-esque type creatures who protected the nation at times of stress, which is how they saw themselves as almost heroic. And then there were the bad monsters like vampires, who were never merely metaphorical in their eyes, but completely real. Yeah, it's pretty, it's pretty awful. Like, it's so fun to be like, oh, they believe in vampires and werewolves, but they, like, genuinely believed that, like, Jewish people were there to just, they were like evil monsters to suck Germany dry of anything good.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So when I talk about these beliefs, I'm not talking about one or two wacky Nazis who the other Nazis just kind of put into the crazy basket. These beliefs were absolutely at the core of many of the evil actions that Hitler and the SS perpetrated against the Jewish people, LGBTQI people, and many other groups. These beliefs were so much a part of them that much of the Nazi symbolism relates back to the paranormal. Even the now notorious insignia of the SS, which actually depicts 2 lightning bolts, was based on runes devised by an Austrian occultist and pagan called Guido von List. The planning of certain large attacks upon their enemy was based on the predictions and psychic future-telling from clairvoyants that had been hired by Nazis. Hitler and his leaders delved deep into the world of tarot and astrology to gain insight into their devious plans ahead. The Führer actually had an astrologer on hand at all times to guide him into decisions related to the war.
That's insane.
I know.
I'm the Nazi astrologer.
I'm the Nazi astrologer. Well, actually, it's very interesting because this astrologer, whose name was Erich Hanussen, he was ironically an Austrian Jewish man.
Okay.
But he was also known to be a popular clairvoyant, hypnotist, mentalist, and occultist. So him being a Jewish man was a secret
Of
from Hitler.
course.
But there is a big chance that Hanussen was actually just a giant fraud and used insider information to convince Hitler of his paranormal powers and predictions. But nonetheless, it is a testament to the trust and legitimacy that the SS gave to the paranormal. One of Hanussen's most prominent predictions was the Reichstag Fire, which was when the German Parliament building was purposely burnt to the ground. And that was really the event that allowed Hitler to seize absolute power in 1933.
Yeah.
This, amongst other economic, social, and political events, were seemingly very useful predictions by Hanussen. It's also interesting to note that many other notable SS leaders, including Himmler, consulted regularly with their own personal astrologers to aid in their tactical decisions.
Personal astrologers. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, they, like, the head SS leaders, the guys that were closest to Hitler, almost every single one had a personal astrologer
Yeah.
that they would relate to make big decisions.
Yeah. Wow.
It's crazy. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, they didn't teach
It's
that in
wild.
history, did they?
No,
You didn't
no.
hear about them.
So apparently Rudolph Hess, who was Hitler's head deputy, so like pretty much right-hand man, he actually fled Germany for Scotland under the advice of his astrologer. So there were big decisions being made due to astrology. Some of the core paranormal beliefs upheld by the Nazis seem so wild that it almost sounds like a movie, similar to Captain America or Raiders of the Lost Ark. There is record of the Third Reich making extensive and expensive hunts for the Holy Grail, the Spear of Destiny, as well as Thor's hammer. The notorious Himmler said of Thor's hammer as, quote, an early, highly developed war weapon of our forefathers. We need to find all places in the northern Germanic Aryan cultural world where an understanding of the lightning bolt, the thunderbolt, Thor's hammer, or the flying or thrown hammer exists. Teams of researchers were sent all around Europe trying to locate some of these ancient weapons. Obviously, with no such luck, as we all know, the Nazis lost and no such weapons were ever used or found. To say that Himmler himself was invested in finding these artifacts is very much an understatement. Himmler developed a research think tank team made up of people from fields of archaeology, anthropology, ethology. There were folklorists and people professed in runology, as well as life sciences like zoology and biology. And their goal was to make a lot of time went into making this team to legitimize their Aryan theory, basically.
Yeah.
Their goal was to make their new Germany as Aryan as possible by making Nordic connections wherever possible, by locating these ancient artifacts as proof to the superiority of the Aryan race. This team was dubbed the Ahnenerbe by Himmler, which translates to ancestral heritage. So just a quick little side note, this name in its own way almost reminds me of like the Anunnaki, which are supposedly like ancient aliens. Just a little brief.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I think of Anubis as well, but that's the Egyptian god.
Anubis. When I was writing this story, I was like, what does that name remind me of?
Anunnaki, because they were like the alien giants.
Yeah. The only and exact purpose of the Ahnenerbe essentially was to locate these ancient artifacts and nothing more. They travelled all across the world: Karelia, Sweden, Italy, Poland, Crimea, and the Ukraine, to only name a few places that were investigated for any kind of proof or evidence of paranormal findings. Other than the search for these weapons, there was one other major focus of Himmler and the Nazis in their search for power, and that was the hunt for Atlantis. He believed that the German people were descendants of the aliens that he believed built Atlantis. And to the Nazis, to find Atlantis would secure the German people as the master race of the world, the Aryan race.
Yeah.
Because they believed that Atlantis was built by a superior race.
Yeah, that's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
You can prove everything.
Exactly. Other than his total dedication to finding ancient weapons and locations, Himmler was also a stark believer of psychics and mediums and the futures that they could predict. As some may know through history, in 1943, which was the back end of the war, Mussolini, who was Hitler's Italian ally and fellow dictator, was overthrown by his own people. Hitler was incandescent with rage, insisting that the fascist leader of his own heart just had to be rescued. Except the problem being that nobody actually knew where Mussolini was. Himmler, who was a total fanboy of Hitler and would do anything to impress him, decided to use his belief in parapsychology to locate Mussolini. Except, due to his own evil doings, Germany's psychics, clairvoyants, and mediums had been rounded up and put into concentration camps because they were Jewish. Because of this, Himmler, who was overseeing the camps, made the decision to release a hand-picked group of psychic mediums from the hellish concentration camps. The weakened, half-starved, and diseased Jewish few were put up in a luxurious villa, provided with rich wine and endless food, and they were given complete freedom to use their magical powers to find Mussolini at no cost.
Oh my God.
Using a map of Italy and a special crystal-tipped swinging pendulum, they did just that, pointing towards a vast mountainous area where Mussolini was apparently hiding under guard. Incredibly, their supernatural deduction seemed to correlate with intelligence reports the Nazis had received from Italian spies.
No way.
And so, yep. And so a team of German paratroopers embarked on a daring and dangerous raid, approaching the mountain fortress, eventually overpowering the guards and discovering that Mussolini really was there, waiting for their rescue. Himmler was so delighted and impressed, he permanently released the psychics with a huge livable payout. So they were free to live how they wished with much money.
God.
There are many other aspects to the I know. There are many other aspects to the Nazis' faith in the occult and paranormal that I didn't even get a chance to touch upon, such as the SS's attraction to using dowsing rods to receive answers from beyond the grave sent by ghosts and spirits, or Hitler's plan to resurrect prehistoric animals such as the ancient auroch for sport hunting, or even the real-life plan to make a German time machine. But I think to put too much focus on these superstitions of Hitler and the SS is possibly problematic territory. It means that we're putting so much value in supernatural forces that influence the Holocaust to happen when really it was humans swinging the sword by their own hand, not ghosts, ghouls, or monsters.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing with the whole Nazi topic. Like, there is so many different ways you could go with just on their beliefs. Like, it's insane. I know the whole UFO side, like how Hitler was totally the believer of that. You know, the whole thing about them now living in Antarctica. There's Nazis on the moon. Like, there's every single type of thing.
Yeah, it was so hard to, like, whittle down what I was going to
Yeah.
include in my story, because they were just so like enamored with
Yeah.
the paranormal.
Mhm.
Like like UFOs. They tried to build UFOs.
Yeah.
They tried to build like bases in Antarctica.
Yeah. He was
and,
fascinated
like,
about pyramids,
all
I know
this
as
stuff.
well. Like just
Pyramids, and it was all like occult kind of
Mhm.
like occultist type,
Yeah.
shit that they were just really, really into.
You managed to narrow it down really well though. Like that was I didn't really know of that whole side of things. The astrology.
Yeah, I know there's been like a lot of like movies and books kind of like depicting like Raiders of the Lost Ark, like Indiana Jones, that style of depicting Nazis as almost like supernatural beings. And I guess that is because they were like the Nazis were so invested in like the paranormal and like the occult and stuff that it creates this image of them being this like kind of powerful, magical like characters. But I think if you, like, as I said at the end of my story, like if you invest too much focus on that, you forget that they were just really shitty people.
Yeah, they were just shitty people that had an endless amount of resources and they could just do what they want. Like, but they were shitty
and
people.
it's like, it's so easy to be like, oh, they were just kind of like, I don't think many people do think this, but if you kind of get into it, you like, I could imagine it would be easy to start thinking like, oh, well, they just believed in astrology and psychics and mediums, and they were given messages from either charlatans or ghosts, but they were being led by other forces. And it's like, no, they were shit guys.
They would use like, any mean they could to achieve their goal. And they all believed in this stuff, but doesn't make them cool.
No,
but I agree. Like, no, I don't think anyone thinks like that.
No,
I mean,
I think there definitely is like a built up kind of image of, especially these days where there is kind of like a resurgence in some way of like anti-Semitism and like the New World Order.
Oh, and, absolutely.
Stuff like that. Like even just the idea of like the New World Order is quite like anti-Semitic, and so
it really
even that is like a fast track to excusing.
It's coming up a lot now. It's you're seeing it all with like the whole lockdown and stuff, and people throwing that term around. I'm like, okay, just everyone take a break. Just
chill the
This is not what we should be talking about. This is
take a Xanax and get vaccinated.
Oh my god. Oh, that was really good.
Thanks. Yeah,
that was a really good way.
I don't think. Thank you. I don't think I'm gonna do too many kind of like history based stories.
I love the history.
Maybe it's interesting, and it isn't just purely history, but it isn't just purely there was a ghost that haunted this house. So I think it's good to move along the spectrum.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, loved it.
Yeah, I think we both had fantastic stories this week.
Same here. I know. I'm glad. I was trying to. When you first started talking about sleep paralysis at the start of the episode, I was like, if she says the word Hatman, I'm going to flip my shit. I'm going to...
That's so funny that we were talking about that. Like,
I really
for so long, and then your whole story... I've got I just kind of don't want to go too far over our time limit, but, like, I've got so much to say about, like, Hatman and shadow people and sleep paralysis, and there's a whole world.
We'll have to talk about on the next episode, I think.
I think so.
Yeah,
we're kind of reaching our limit of how much we can talk this episode. But like if you do enjoy what we do, or even if you don't enjoy what we do, and you really want to tell us how shit you think we are,
be honest.
Leave us a review.
Leave us a review.
Yeah, be honest.
Any app that you use. We're on Apple now. We're on Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, pretty much any podcast app. We're pretty much there.
Yay.
And follow us on our social medias as well.
Yes, social media is also a great way to follow what we're doing, but also we post photos of like stuff relating to our stories for the week, so you can kind of see visually what we're talking about, which is helpful.
And also other things as well.
Yeah,
like that
other stuff.
picture you were talking about of the ghost kids on the hill. That's really
we'll post that one for
interesting to
sure.
upload.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening.
I hope you enjoyed the episode, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right. We'll see you then.
Bye.
This episode of Spooky Mountain was created and recorded on land of the original custodians, the Gundungurra and Bidjigal people. We pay respects to the past, present, and emerging mob. My name is Jordi, and I'm a proud Gunya woman. Thank you for listening.